take a look at page length options. What we're talking about here is in the preview tab, we're going to look at how we can control whether or not this option to show how many records per page is visible to the user, and to be able to control what the values in the drop-down list are and what you set as your default of the landing when you come to a report. So just to understand, the length change control will say, does this appear or not? And the length menu control will tell you what's in the drop-down. And then there's one more setting what we can actually say by default when we come in, choose this to be our number of records. So let's see where we do that in the builder. First of all, just to remind you, just like searching and pagination that we just covered, you can control whether or not the user gets to see the length change in the DOM. So just removing it completely, that's represented by the L tag. And then you can also change it in the DataTables builders settings for the JS function, where you can toggle it from true or false to display. And then I've also added some more features in the settings to control what those drop-down values are and which one do you want to be the default. So I'll show you where those are in our settings. Like I said, the DOM positions right here. The L is the page length, okay? So that if you take it out of the DOM, it won't appear anywhere. That's the overall reaching setting. Then if we look at number 2, we can shut the length change on or off on a report right here. And just to remind you why you might do that, if your report is only always, let's say, 10 records long, or 12, like the month of the year or something with some static data, there's no need to display this. Like if it's taking up space or it's not a long list or a searchable thing, just be smart on what you're using it for. And just if it's not necessary, don't waste the DOM element space at the top for something that the user doesn't need to have to control the report. All right, and then the page length options, we'll do this in the demo, but I basically am using a FileMaker value list, right? A custom list that allows you on that record to say, these are the values I want in the dropdown. So by checking those, that's what's going to appear. And we'll do a little demo and try that ourselves. And then this last one, the page length and load, is we're saying from the values above up here, what do we want natively when we land on that page? How many do we want to actually show? So let's get into the demo, look at how these things are going to be controlled, and let you see for yourself what the power is of this setting. We're in the demo file 2.5, page length options. Let's hit quick start. Just a reminder, on our last lesson, we looked at the pagination control, which is represented right here. This video, we are going to look at controlling how many records are shown on each page and whether that control is visible or not. So as you guys all know, let's repeat our step to get our lesson set up. Go to the last video. Let's go ahead and duplicate this entire record. And let's get it named 2.5 page length options. Okay, submit and close. All right, everything looks the same video to video. What we're going to do now on 2.5 is let's go back into our settings and first of all, control whether or not this is seen and show how we do that. All right, we'll hit our settings in here. And remember, as always, if we remove the option from the DOM, then it overrides all other settings. So by removing the L out of here, it would be completely gone. Again, I've emphasized this before. I tend to leave that in the format that I like and then just control it report to report to report. Okay, so what we're talking about right now is pretty much this side of the settings. If I turn length change to false, the other settings below are pretty much going to be ignored. But let's go ahead and just look to see what that looks like. All right. Do you see it's now gone? So even though the pagination still stays here, it knows how many records we have, and we have the number of things set behind, we can control that. So right now I'm showing 150 entries. Watch this. If I want to go to the settings and I change this to be 10, because it's easier to see. Remember, I've still not shown I'm showing 10 results, I'm not giving the user the option. So they do work hand in hand, and this is still here. So that does work. So just so you know, you can set what it looks like, but stop the user from having control. So it is important to understand the difference. One thing I need to point out to you though is if we go into the JS function and look at this, and if I turn the paging off, let's see what happens there. So let's turn the length back to true so that the user has the option, and leave all of this alone with 10 default. But I'm going to turn the paging off. Submit that. What do you think is going to happen? By default, because I turned the paging off, the length input goes away. There's no value to having it because the user cannot control pagination. So the system is smart enough to say, if you don't show pagination, you don't show the user the input. However, everything is just shown, all records. So if you have a large found set, that might be an instance for you to go and say, you know what, I don't want that to be the case. So it's always showing 500 records. So know that pagination, length menu, and the number of records you have is something that you should be thinking about as far as your user's experience. All right, let's go back into our settings and do a couple more things. We're going to go back into the settings. We're going to turn the pagination back on. The length change is now also on. And you've seen here where we can, this is the drop down options. So it's got all 10, 20, 50, 100, and I give you an option for other. And then right now the page length is set to 10. Well, let's just change it to 20 so that we know it's different. What I expect to see is that there's going to be a drop down box allowing the user to change it. These are the values in the drop down box. And when the page loads, it's going to default to whatever I say here. So let's go check that out. Hit the preview tab, and you can see I'm showing 20 options. That was the default value I set there. But if I look down at the drop down, it's now showing me all the stuff I put in there. So let's go change that. All right. Here we are. Let's say we don't want 20 shown and we don't want 50 shown, but we're going to add other. Let's go ahead and say 250. Okay. Say okay here. So now you can see I've got some options. And if I come here, I have to pick from one of these options. So let's go ahead and choose the 250, update and close, and come back. 250 options, 10, 100. You see how simple it is? You know, I built this just to allow you to be able to play with it and understand how to use it. You can control these out of the box. I believe it comes with the values that I already had predefined, but you need to set this based on your settings. So imagine a report that's really, really lengthy, and maybe your real estate on your web viewer in FileMaker is only so big. If it was a portal, maybe you want it to be controlled by just saying I can only have room for 8 records. So I'm going to limit it to 8 and let the user just flip through the pages. Or I'm going to say show all. It might have a delay in loading everything, but then you won't have all the pagination and scrolling. So just think about how you can customize this and let it be. And we are now done with this lesson right here. And the next demo, the last of this series, we're just going to look at some other settings that you can control, similar like to this info and some other things that you can now, that you've learned where to do this, how to handle and manage it on your own.